Hi, welcome to this week's episode of WEtv. We're so excited because we're going to talk about living a life living with intention, taking responsibility for your actions. We also touch on financial well-being.
Tell me, Finn, what your life would look like if money was not an issue at all.
Oh, it's something I'm working on.
I know that, but let's fast forward. Let's take the old, won the lottery, got as much as you could ever want or need.
So it'd pretty much be what I'm doing. I really feel like my life wouldn't change that much. It just might be on a bigger scale. So I'd be able to take some bigger risks. I would work out ways where I can educate like the masses on what we're doing. So putting a lot more budget behind WeTV, putting it out there, putting it on Oprah's network. I'd be finding a way to do something like that.
WeTV hits Netflix.
Yeah, damn straight. But ultimately, it would be, not that much different, I think. I think it would be calmer, but that's because I've spent a lot of time getting to this point to actually make a life where I'm not thinking about money that much.
I feel like I should have gone first answering that question because mine is a smidge different.
Yeah, let me start with that.
I think.
How about I start with it and ask you now?
You can ask me now.
Okay. So Beck, we're talking about...
You can just be like, we should have started with you.
What?
Just ask me the question. I'll keep a straight face.
So Beck, tell me what your life would look like if you didn't actually have to worry about money.
It wouldn't be hugely different from now. There's a few big picture things that would change. I would have my dream house in Bonnie Doon, and it would be this stunning... I never quite know if it's carbon positive or negative. The good one of those two, this beautiful eco house on the water that becomes like this central hub for family and friends. But I feel like that is the only big, noticeably different thing. And Mr. Pritchard and I are working towards doing that in the absence of the lottery. So I'm confident we'll get there pretty soon. But other than that, I think I wouldn't immediately move house or live anywhere differently. I'm trying to get rid of my car at the moment anyway. I think I'd probably stop being a little bit of a tight ass when it comes to my personal spending around food. I think certain like cheeses and like macadamias. Ooh. I would have macadamias in my life.
I like that.
Every week. I know I've spoken a lot in the past about strawberries, but macadamias would feature. And I think it's just those little things where you're like, I don't really need to spend $9 on this right now, but if I...
So I don't feel if I ask that to a lot of people, they would be able to give such a grounded answer. What has given you that ability to have conviction in saying that? Has it always been like that, or is this a new thing or something you've had to work towards?
No, I think it is something that's been an evolution, and I love to travel. Having flying business class would be lovely, or having a really nice hotel. But I don't feel like I need that, and I've identified in the last couple of years that the reason I don't travel more is not anything to do with money. It's because I love what I do and I love my lifestyle, and it's more of a time constraint more so than a money constraint. And that was incredibly liberating. So now I know if I won $1 million or $10 million, I probably wouldn't necessarily travel that much more than I do right now, which is a really empowering feeling. But I think it's taking a certain amount of responsibility for the day-to-day decisions that we make, and say like, okay, like would you do this differently? Can you do it differently? I mean, I make pretty good money. I'm 5-6 years down the get rich slow journey, and I'm doing okay. And so I often describe it as you lose the right to complain because you have the power to change these things. And so like if you're not happy with something, can you just do it differently?
But talk about what are the actual key elements. So you mentioned you've been down that get rich slow journey. What are the things which are able to actually because I know I've seen some of your goals, they've changed over the years. We often think people's goals get bigger as they get more affluent, but we actually see the difference in wealth enhancers. We often see they compress a lot. So talked about your journey there, but also maybe some of the stories you've had with members as well.
Well, I think it was you who described my goals initially as a bit on the vanilla side. And vanilla is a fabulous flavour, not to be knocked at all, but they were very much rooted in the shoulds. I should pay off my mortgage. I should invest more so that I can retire. I should have a bigger house. All of those sort of things. And going over them over time, you go, I'm actually completely disconnected to that. And particularly given the last few years, I've saved and invested a very high percentage of my income. So if I strip that right back, I can look at my life and go, I don't need that much right now. And really sort of reveled in that simplicity of it, which takes away this feeling of like I must always be going towards these other things and other things and other things. And I think one of your biggest strengths is that you are so clear on your purpose and what you are doing. And a lot of people like me and who have a rough idea and they're putting it into words. A lot of people are where I was 5 years ago, which is something's not quite sitting right. Don't quite know what it is. Don't quite know what the right thing looks like. How do we go about this?
And you mentioned something before when I almost cringed when you said the shoulds. How shit are the shoulds?
Fuck the shoulds.
There's all these people who are living life because of the shoulds. And who are these shoulds? They've just basically like handed over the power to other people. And that's something which we're very focused about in that earliest part is getting to this idea of like, what is your purpose? What are your values? And then like, what are your aspirations? And it takes a long time to strip back. Like we just had a conversation about a member today, super successful guy, going so well, crushing life, thought he was coming on just for to optimize things and get good financial advice. And it's taken 2 years, and now you're having the meaty questions like, what do you actually want to achieve in this life?
And for people who have money, and this doesn't necessarily mean wealth, but cash flow. You know, for millennials, a lot of the people we work with, particularly at the start, don't necessarily have cash or capital, but they have cash flow. It's one of the millennials' biggest strengths. It can be a blessing and a curse because it can be distracting, but it's such a great place to be starting from. And that story of that member, it took a long time for him to break down away from the distraction of like, I've got my cash flow, I should put it here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to invest, I'm going to set myself up. And I would say it's actually 2.5 years, closer to 3 years now since we started that process. And it's going, so what's all this money for? So you've done that. And we've definitely made a lot of financial progress and a lot of progress in terms of even health and happiness. But we haven't answered those big picture questions just yet. And I know you spoke in our first episode of this season around how to define your purpose or how to articulate. Do you find people struggle with that?
Oh, so hard.
Like even when you ask them directly and you give them that framework?
It's so scary. Like I'm dealing with entrepreneurs who have $400-500 million businesses who have impacted the world, so successful. And I do this intentional life exercise called My Intentional Path. And they get to the purpose bit, the first question, and they're just like, I can't answer it. I don't know what I'm doing. And after we do that exercise, I've seen people sell their businesses, break up in relationships, they've changed their spirituality because suddenly for the first time, they're asking their inner self and working out what's important to them rather than this path which they may have been set off from childhood because of their parents or a situation occurred or society's pressures. And it's confronting for people. It's really scary. But once you get through that fear, it's so beautiful because suddenly you're like, oh, this is my life. I'm living my life on my terms. And often we find it with our members, it gets so stripped back. Like all those goals, they're like, that doesn't make me happy. Like, that money, that car, that house, it doesn't really make myself money. When it comes down to it, it's pretty simple. It's relationships, it's feeling purpose, it's being healthy and having time. which is another important thing. We don't talk about the value of time enough.
Oh, okay. We could almost have a whole episode
Whoa.
just on time.
Maybe we need to.
Absolutely. No, I found this personally. When my husband and I started doing this process for ourselves, and one of our goals was we're going to put our kids through private school, and a few years later we're like, we both went to public schools. We met at public schools, and we fell in love and got married. Like, what a great place to be! And we were thinking about the really powerful memories from both of our families growing up, and we thought, no, we would rather create this a different style of lifestyle for our children, and fuck the private school.
Mm-hmm.
And now because we did actually start investing for that purpose, and now that money is soon going into our holiday house, and I'm really pumped about that. But going back to what you were just saying, why do you think it's so hard to write these purpose statements? Why are people looking at a blank page?
I think there's a couple of factors that contribute to it. One is we've been on a path really guided by others from a very young age. It's like you've got to go well at school so you can get into university, so you can get a job. It's all these shoulds, and you'll be happy once you're in the future type thing. So it's almost like we're never living in the now.
Deferring our happiness.
We're deferring it, and we'll be like, all right, we'll work that out later. So that's one area. I think a really big contributing factor is suddenly when you define your purpose, you're also like pretty much announcing that you now are responsible for your life and your happiness. And if you are not potentially happy, or you're not content with where your path is going on, and you look at it and it's because it's like contradicting your purpose, you have to actually make the change, which is really hard and confronting for people.
I love the concept of, when we're all living happy and healthy, it's like, oh, fantastic, I'll take responsibility for this. But also when we're sad and miserable, we need to own our wins, but we need to own our losses as well, and say, this is my choice. I took myself to this place.
Which is, once you start realizing that you can take ownership, it's awesome, because if you got yourself into that mess, you can also get yourself out of that mess. Where a lot of the times we just like to go, oh, that's someone else's fault, or I'm not responsible for that. So I challenge everyone, like, really start looking at your situation and take ownership for it. Because all you have is yourself. And if you just like look at these particular problems as challenges and great opportunities, life gets pretty empowering, and it's all just a fun game as well.
So how do we do this?
There's a few elements. One, we've spoken about the purpose side. The next stage is working out your values. So the purpose is like why you get out of bed every day. It's the Simon Sinek's story. If anyone wants to look up a good thing about why, the purpose, look up Simon Sinek's video. The values are almost your decision frameworks. It's the metrics that you look at each day when you're looking at decision and go, does this fit well with me? Do I feel comfortable with this? If I make this decision to go down this path, is it contradicting or is it in line with my values? So getting a good and touch relationship with there. And then you start looking at your life and going, well, how do I actually set my life up so it's in line with my purpose and values? Is my work in line with my purpose and values? Now, if I was all about my purpose is providing insights, but then I was in a job where it was all about keeping information from the consumer, because I was in a big data play and I was trying to manipulate people, that wouldn't be very good for me, would it? It would start causing me grief over the long term. So looking at your professional side, who you're spending time with, how you're allocating money is one of the greatest ways to determine whether you're living life with your values. We think that money is love, because what you love is where you end up putting your money. So you need to make sure that you're aware of that. And that's one of the big things that we do, is like help people be aware of where their money's flowing.
So clearly I love macadamias.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are trying to, this is bloody hard, right?
It really is.
How long do you think it took you to get a really good grasp on this?
Years.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely years. I feel like every year I just keep iterating it and making improvement. The average, what we see with our members is it kicks in probably like the 2 to 3 year mark. First year is all just about like, it's just exciting for them because there's change. Sometimes it's not so exciting because there's a bit of change, but things are happening. Like there's so much happening with money, movements and everything like that. Second year is more of this like consistent work and we're
starting to build a bit of momentum.
Building it, seeing what happens. And then the third year, they're starting to go, you know what? All that stuff we put down isn't actually truth. It's not who we really are. And because we've got more in touch with our purpose and values, we're starting to question where our money goes more. We've now made these decisions. So I feel like it's that third year mark where you start seeing the really great results.
And this is why it's called Get Rich Slow.
It is.
Not called Get Rich Soonish.
It is. And then where you start really seeing the great, like for your financial results, is that sort of 5 to 7 years. And that's just in line with compound interest. Like our human mind thinks in a linear fashion and compound interest is an exponential curve. And with exponential curves, they've got a really long base and then they suddenly do this. And it's about the 7-year mark with investing where you see those results.
Yeah, I'm about 5.5, 6 years in, so I feel like I'm just starting to get some of that. So this process takes a bloody long time to do, but we also talk about people taking action with their finances. Now, how do we reconcile these two concepts?
It's a challenge. So we need to just think of what are the daily behavioural changes that we can do. So what we're doing with our members is, this financial advice is one element, but if you just gave great financial advice and left it up to the consumer or for members for us, it would be very unlikely that they would have success because it's about behavioural changes. And a lot of the time we don't know our own behaviour. We don't know what is good behaviour and we don't know what is potentially detracting behaviour. So it's these tiny little changes. One, actually knowing where your money is going. That's the first place.
Step one, financial hygiene.
Look at the financial hygiene. Is it going to things that I care about? Can I clean up things? Starting investing. The secret to getting rich in financial assets is to spend less than you earn and invest. That's it. Like if you want to just stop right now and learn how to get rich, that's it. Spend less than you earn and invest. So set up a regular investment strategy. Make sure you have some cash reserves for that day where things go wrong. And then start looking at yourself with behavior and going, all right, what do I need to do to improve over time?
So how do people do that though if they are still battling with understanding a potentially nebulous or murky future? They don't know, it's opaque, they're not sure what they're going to. How do you find having conversations with people about investing when they don't have clarity around that?
When are we going to get clarity? I think this is it's an illusion when people go, oh, I'll do this once I know what I'm doing. We don't know. That's the fact of the millennial generation, and we're only going to have more and more uncertainty as time goes on. Some of I was recently at Singularity University, which is a university in Silicon Valley all about the exponential technologies that are coming out in the next sort of 10 years, which will dramatically change the world. With the common, they were focusing on the cause of how they improve the humankind and fix the global challenges. Now, there's so much change going to occur and it's just going to be speeding up. Your concept of what you think you're in a stable job now, that job may not even exist in 5 years' time. Or the monetary system that we look at right now may not exist. So the certainty isn't going to be there. So we need to start focusing on what we can do now. It's these tiny little changes. And just because I may have just scared some people with that, people are going, well, what's the point anyway?
Okay.
You've just got to take responsibility for where you're at and start improving because things will change, but there'll be some fundamental processes and philosophies which are consistent throughout.
I find the secret sauce around thinking about this is being comfortable with not knowing, but also being comfortable with knowing that you will want to do something. So if we wait until we know what we want to do, so let's say I'm happy renting my house, renting it out. I don't want to buy a house, so I don't save for that. And then one day I go, right, I just walk past this house, the sale sign, I want to get into that place. I need $150,000 deposit.
It's going to take a long time.
It's going to take a bloody long time. Whereas if a few years ago I was happy renting, but, and this is a really, really common story for a lot of my members who they may want to own a house. They are very happy with where they are, but they're starting to think, okay, I'm just going to put some stuff aside. And, you know, a couple of years later, we ask the question, like, how's it going? How are you feeling with where you're living? Are you happy with that? And they're like, yep, we've got 30 grand sitting there. A few years later, it's 50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand. And, you know, it was like what I was saying before about the holidays. It's the difference between going, I'm choosing not to go because it doesn't fit in with my lifestyle right now, opposed to I can't afford to do this, and really owning that decision.
Correct.
And because we know you're going to want to do something. We're not saying in 5 years' time you want to sit at home and just watch a Netflix marathon and eat frozen lasagnas. You're going to want to do something, and you can't start then.
So what are you doing for your members there? Like, what are you providing them?
So in terms of saving, investing, they're basically defensive. There are three sort of streams when we're talking about it. Cash flow is important for now. Investing is important for later. And investments can be flexible. People think that they have to be these really rigid things, but they can be really, really flexible. And when you're investing across different structures, so we're talking, say, a share portfolio, a bond, maybe property, maybe business, maybe using your super, all of them are really useful for different things. They're useful across different timelines. Mm-hmm. They give us different access to liquidity, and therefore having all of them, probably, maybe not business for everyone, but having all of them means that when that future rolls around, we've got a huge head start on these things.
You've got options.
We've got so many options. So the bond that I set up for my children that I still don't have to go to the private school that I don't know, they no longer care about, is now 30% of the deposit for the dream house that I'm going to build in the country.
And isn't that empowering that you have the flexibility to change your mind? So I think a lot of the time we go on this path and we think, oh, it's too late, we're locked in. And what we're trying to do is go, no, everything's always optional and flexible. And that's why it's so important to get it right from day one. Like, how many members come to you with a set particular investment strategy that they really want?
A few.
Yeah, and what actually happens to some of these people when they may not listen to some of your guidance?
It leads to really challenging decision making because decisions can become rushed. Mm-hmm. You can be forced into taking actions at inopportune moments. You know, the common example we talk about is around property, and I love property.
We love property.
I'm very pro property, but if that is your portfolio, particularly if you have one, and you need money quickly, there's no flexibility, and that's going to result in you selling that property.
You can't sell down a bathroom, can you?
My joke is always the kitchen. You can't sell a kitchen. And it just doesn't give flexibility in that regard. So helping people, and it's something that I think we are fantastic at Wealth Enhancers, is around investing for options in the future. It's okay if you don't know what that looks like, because we can still work around that. And, you know, some of my members, quite common one is around parental leave. And so it might be starting families a few years down the track. So go, okay, a few years down the track, that aligns pretty well with a share portfolio. Let's set that up. Let's build it up over time. That time comes around and they're like, I've actually got a fantastic parental leave program at work, or I'm earning so much more than I thought I was a few years ago. We don't need that, but now that resource becomes available. Gee, it's good to know that it's there. Mm-hmm. And if we want to take time off work for a longer period of time, we can. But also, like, we've now got a head start on that goal, and we can do that. And it's so liberating, particularly for these big lifestyle decisions, to know that we're not stuck in the things that we can't afford. Because I think that's when people think of financial freedom, that's the feeling. We go, we don't want to be making decisions based off money. Mm-hmm. We want to be thinking about other resources, which I think is around our time and our energy, and how do we get more of those or put them to better use.
And I think I like that you just touched on financial freedom, because a lot of people, when they think of financial freedom, it's about having all your money so you never have to work again. It's not actually the case, is it? It's making sure that you're free of like this controlling mechanism of money. Like, you know that you've got enough cash for reserves, so if something goes wrong to you, fine. You've got insurance covered. You've got flexibility or investments that you know that if something occurred, you could sell one down and it would be completely fine. It's all these things covered, and you've got the flexibility to live the life that you want. That is financial freedom to me. It's not this concept of building up one lump sum, because that's quite hard and it's super challenging. And in the entrepreneur world, we see it all the time. They think, I've just got to have this big exit and I'll be completely fine.
When I have $60 million, I will be free.
And the funny thing is, I used to work with a lot of really wealthy people. They weren't free. When they sold their business, they were more stressed than they've ever been because they're like, what do I do with this money now? What's the meaning of life? How do I live? So don't think building up a lot of money is going to make you suddenly financially free. It's a mindset. It's a behavior concept.
Well, and also that means that what the hell are we doing between now and then?
Yeah.
You know, if we do need that number, and I agree that number is important, or that concept is important to move towards. But if we're not happy and healthy with where we are now, it's a long journey. That's a long, miserable journey. So what do you see as the difference, or are they the same thing, financial well-being and financial freedom?
So financial well-being is very linked to financial freedom. I think it's the same concept. So financial well-being is making sure that you have a positive relationship with money, and it's actually enhancing rather than detracting from your life. A lot of people think they don't care about money, and they actually care about money more than anyone because it's controlling them, it's giving them stress, it's giving them anxiety. So you can't just go out of mind, out of sight. It's making sure that you're aware where the money's going, you're happy where it's going, you have good cash reserves, and you have the ability to meet both your short-term and long-term needs without detracting from your physical, your psychological, and your spiritual health.
Okay, so this is an interesting topic, and I suspect we'll go into this in a bit more detail in another episode. But how do we balance those short and medium term needs? And when I say short term, I'm saying I'd like to go to Pilates, and I'd like to eat really nice food, and I'd like to invest in my health and maybe go to the osteo, and I think I've got a feeling in my tooth, and all of these health and well-being related things that we can be doing now. And the world is fantastic right now to invest in your health. But a lot of it costs money. How do we balance that and saying that's really important to saying I'm going to invest for my future so I can have a lifetime of Pilates?
It's a challenge we're seeing a lot with our members because the wellbeing movement has increased a lot, and we're seeing people spend really great money on their their spiritual growth, and they're going to retreats in Bali and they're doing all these things. But because they weren't financially responsible and they didn't put the proper planning in place, they come back and they've been avoiding it, and now suddenly they have stress and they need to go on the whole retreat again. So it's about balance. Balance is really important, and that's why we're moving to this concept of financial wellness, that we can't have, it's been very focused on well-being, on physical, spiritual, and psychological, and there's just always been this thing just put around in the corner, this financial bit. You can't have one without the other. Financial is part of everything we do now, so we need to have a good relationship with it. So it's just identifying what's really important to you, what's going to have the greatest positive effect for you, and where you're going to get your best bang for your buck. And being mindful that your long-term financial wellness can be determined by your short-term responsibility right now.
We were having an interesting conversation about this recently with one of my members who, she was having some time constraints. You know, a lot of things happening, very busy person, and you know, we all know how I feel about
the word busy.
Oh no, I think everyone watching WEtv knows how I feel about the word busy.
Busy is a lack of prioritizing and being aware of your life.
But there was a lot of stuff happening in her life, and we were talking about balance. And she was working, she was studying, going to the gym, and I was like, okay, I want to go through my budget, but I don't really have time this week. Possibly next week, possibly the week after, I'm going to sit down and do my budget. And we actually took stock for a moment and said, this is important for your financial well-being, your financial health. Where does that sit relative to going to the gym?
Mm-hmm.
And
Make them have to choose.
She was like, what do you mean? And actually going, yes, your physical health, and you know, for her, going to the gym is also about mental health as well. Where does this sit relative to that? If you could have half an hour at the gym and spend half an hour doing your budget to improve your financial health, is that a good use of your of time as your sort of scarce resource right now. It was confronting.
It's like I used to have this concept that I had to work out every day. And even if I'd gone to bed at like 1 a.m. and I had a 6 a.m. start, I'd get up and do a workout because I thought I felt better and it was so important to me. I've since learned how important sleep is, and potentially sleeping for an extra half an hour and just going for a 10-minute stretch has the better result than just doing the actual workout. So it's this idea of like, you can take a little bit from there and put it there and you'll get a better result than just having it all in one area.
But I think it also speaks to us going onto autopilot and taking some of these concepts, which I think they're robust, the idea of working out or managing your time around sleep or whatever it might be, but going, have I just stopped questioning that? And how is it actually helping me today in this way? And going back to what you were saying before around taking responsibility for this. And sometimes we have to make those challenging decisions, and it is tough.
Have you made any tough decisions recently?
Oh, probably. Absolutely. I often try and get the balance between convenience, like paying for convenience. I think that's a challenging one. I think the best example I have of this is that that I stopped or cut right back on eating meat. And the reason for that is very much environmental. I happen to love meat. Sorry to all the animal lovers out there. But it was driven by an environmental decision, and I wanted to reduce wastage and all, etc. It's a conversation for another time. But then I would take the bones from my husband's meals and put them in stock and then put them in my food. And people are like, how are you doing that? Like, you're not a vegetarian. Like, that's awful. And it's like, no, on the big picture, that balance made so much more sense for me in terms of, if that's already existed, I don't want to, I'm going to reuse that. I'm going to get extra value out of that. I'm going to put it over there and do this. And at first, I actually really struggled with it for a while, and I recognized the pain of me throwing these the bones into the bin. I was like, this doesn't feel good for me.
Yep.
I'm not happy. And I was like, fuck being a vegetarian. Like, that wasn't what I was trying to achieve. It didn't align with my values. It didn't sit well with my purpose. And I thought, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, and I think often we have a concept of all or nothing. Like, we'll be like, I'll sort out my health once I get through this, or I'll sort out my finances once I get this promotion. And it's not like that. We just need to be doing little bits.
But that's like saying, I will be happy when this happens or this happens.
And life is grey. If you look at the Tao Te Ching, which is the old Chinese philosophy way, it's about being in the middle. I know you're laughing, but I challenge you, it's about being in the middle. And I am a guy who was very all or nothing type personality. And as I get older, I'm like, just somewhere in the middle.
I just love that you went with Tao Te Ching, and I was like, it's like 50 Shades of Grey. That was the one I was going to go for.
I like that.
So for people who are looking to be more financially well, so we try and articulate this purpose while simultaneously being comfortable with not knowing it and knowing that it's a process. We explore and write down our values. We make these sort of small incremental changes. We Kaizen our way through it. And then rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat.
Keep assessing, questioning where you're spending your time, your money, and your focus. Is it where you really value? So keep questioning yourself, because sometimes it takes a while to brush off what's happened in your life or the ego. So just keep asking yourself, is this really important to me? And check, are you seeing positive improvements in your overall well-being? That's the greatest sign to see if you're doing the right thing. And seek guidance. There's something which we have a lot in our membership is we share stories a lot, because we have the insights. We've worked with so many different people and we've seen, all right, if you spend this amount on your health budget, this is a good optimal amount. No, 25% is way too much, because now you're detracting from your financial wellness, and that's going to end up causing you stress, which is going to end up causing you deterioration in your health again. So just making sure that it's all balanced out, keep optimizing, and you'll have a really great life.
So let's just clarify what you just said, because I love this. So there is a time and place for people to DIY health, to save money, to sort out other shit.
Yes, there really is. It sounds weird, doesn't it?
And because I think people struggle with health particularly. They go, what, you're saying I shouldn't go to the doctor, I shouldn't buy my vitamins, I shouldn't have my personal trainer, and sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the greatest health things you can do are free. Get out in nature, breathe, sleep. If everyone just slept more, breathed more, and went into nature, we'd be a healthier society. But unfortunately, we get caught up in the materialistic, consumer-driven world, which drives us into a place where often we're stressed, and then that causes us to go again and get health treatments, and then that causes financial stress, and it just goes in this vicious circle. So stop the vicious circle.
Then we get really busy, so we catch an Uber, and then we get Uber Eats, and then we run out of money.
Yep. Exactly. And then we get sad, so we go spend some more money, and then we get sad because we don't have money, and it's just this dangerous circle. So sleep, breathe, and be in nature.
I love that.
Boom.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of WEtv. There is a big difference between being financially free, being financially well, and living an intentional life, and we want to help you do exactly that.
So next week, we're going to talk about health. We're going to give you some tips on how we live a healthy life and how we're going to help you live a healthy life.